All right, thank you very much for having me. I'm going to try to coordinate my screen and the screen here, but just to say, as introduced, I'm Angela Pugh. I work for NESTA, for the Digital R&D Fund for the Arts. So just to say, this is a briefing session. We also run collaborative workshops, but today it's just sort of an opportunity to talk about what the R&D Fund is, who it's for, and how you can apply. So, okay. What it is it's a £7 million fund. It's a collaboration between the Arts Council England, the Arts and Humanities Research Council, and NESTA. It's basically to enhance audience reach and/or develop new business models for the arts sector. Oh, sorry, because we're... and basically, there's £125 of funding available for individual projects, and it's to generate knowledge and learning for the wider arts sector. Okay, this is going to be a bit... Could you mind doing that? Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so it's a two-stage approach. Basically, there's an expression of interest. It's a rolling application process. It's a light touch application. You find out within 7 weeks whether or not you've been successful. And the application deadline is the 30th of December this year. So that's just for the expression of interest. So I would encourage you to try and get your application in as soon as possible. Because the second stage, basically, it's a final application. And there, you find out more details once you've sort of been successful at expression of interest stage. But you have up to a year, up until the 30th, the 10th of March, basically, to find out. But that's more of an extensive bit of the expression of interest, exactly the same questions, but it's a bit more detail. So could you move to the... Yep, fine. So who's it for? Basically, the lead applicant needs to be an organization with an arts project. So it doesn't have to be an arts organization per se, but it needs to be an organization that has an arts project. They need to be based in England, and the project needs to be based in England. And you need to be working in collaboration with two others. So these need to be two other separate organizations. You need to have a technology provider. The technology provider needs to have the appropriate skills. Now, I get asked a lot of questions about what that means, what kind of, do we have any ideas of what does it mean to have the technical skills. They need to be appropriate to your particular project. So we don't have any hard and fast rules, but if you're building a website, they need to be able to build a website. So I mean, it's kind of specific to your project. And there's no restriction on location. At the moment, I believe the Royal Opera House is working with a technology provider that's based in Seattle. And for one of the pilot projects, Punch Drunk was working with MIT Media Lab. So there's no restriction on that, although you might want to think about in terms of how you're going to communicate and collaborate with those people. And then, in addition, you need to be working with a researcher or a research team. And this individual needs to be based in the UK. They need to be working for and supported by a UK higher education institute or an AHRC recognized independent research organization. Now, these aren't basically, what we're not looking to do is to fund commercial research. And so the independent research organizations are somebody, say, like the Tate or Imperial War Museum is also one of these. But if you have questions about whether or not your researcher is eligible, you can get in contact. Also, the researcher needs to be a postdoctoral standing, and they need to have experience in the thematic areas. Now, the thematic areas, I believe you have them in your pack on the information guide, but those are user-generated content and social media, distribution and exhibition, mobile location and games, data and archive, resources, education and learning. Now, it's very broad, so again, kind of pretty much covers anything you might want to do in the space. But if you have any questions or any doubts, again, we can ask the questions, or we can talk about your individual projects during the break. Can you go to the next one? Yeah. So again, this is just to sort of emphasize that it needs to be sort of 3 different parties representing sort of an art space, the tech space, and the research space. The next one. So how does it work and how can you apply? Basically, the application process has 5 different sections: proposition, project research, learning and wider impact, collaboration, project delivery, and research. And the next few slides are going to be quite dense, but again, all of this information is on our website. It's www.artsdigitalrnd.org.uk, and everything that I'm saying here, including this presentation, is up on the website. So when in doubt, check the... Okay. Oh, no. 1 second. Okay. Could you go to the next one? So eligibility, yeah. So again, as I said before, an organization based in England, an arts project located in England, working with digital technologies to expand audience reach and engagement, so it doesn't have to be, it can be one or the other, or explore new business models for the arts sector. Now, this is really important because a lot of people basically come with an idea that they want to do a project for themselves. Now, that's great and that's fine, that is what we're funding, but we're also funding learning, basically. One of the main objectives of the fund is to disseminate and share learning from your particular project that's actually appropriate and useful to other arts organizations. So it's really important when thinking and articulating what your research question is or what your proposition is, that it has relevance outside of your organization. So yeah, I mean, we can talk about individual questions later, but it's very important to think about this. How is the rest of the sector going to benefit from my particular project? You know, in a situation where there's less and less public funding, we need to get to a point where actually each bit of public funding is actually generating more beyond actually what that individual project is. So it's looking at how we can share and disseminate the knowledge that's generated from your particular project to the rest of the sector. So even if they're not getting the public funding, they're at least benefiting from the knowledge and the learning that's created. Okay, again, a three-way partnership between arts, technology, and research, and thematic areas. And the projects must have clear benefit to the public. I mean, that's an important point in the sense that, again, we're trying to not only fund R&D projects for individual organizations, but we're also looking for projects that have a benefit to the public. Okay. Next slide. Oh, yeah, there we go. No, you've gone one too far. Yeah, here we go. So proposition. Again, as I said, these are very dense, and we're not, so I'll run through them quite quickly, but we're looking for projects that are sort of innovative and relating to the fund's objectives, i.e. audience engagement and or the development of new business models. We're looking for projects that have research and learning and wider impacts, so the potential of the project to deliver data and research and outcomes that are important to the arts sector. The potential for projects to deliver products and services, again, for the wider art sector, and the dissemination of learning projects. Next one. Collaboration, I've covered this bit. Project delivery, I mean, just to say as well, these might feel like a lot of things, but actually, each one of them has a question in the application form, but they're very light touch, and you have a very limited amount of word count that actually you can fill in. So you have to be very succinct, you have to be very clear in what it is that you're trying to do, and actually get across in relatively short amount of time or space what it is that you want to do. Okay, and then research, relevance of research methodology to the project. Again, is your research methodology, I mean, is how you're going to measure the impact, how you're going to measure the success of your particular question actually relevant to your project. The benefit of research to the wider arts sector, again, we're not just looking to fund digital projects, I mean, very much balanced between the research side and the tech side and the development side. We're looking to fund research and development projects. So, next minute. So in terms of finding a partner, I get asked a lot about how can you know, I don't know a researcher, I need to find a tech provider. Well, we have a platform on the website at the moment where basically more and more people are kind of uploading their interest in R&D projects. So if you're at a complete loss, I would look there. We're having a growing mass of individuals or companies who are actually putting up their details. We don't vet the information, so please do kind of do a bit of due diligence in order to check these partners. I mean, we don't validate them in any kind of way. We just sort of offer it as a means of finding other people. And you can search by region, specialism, and partner type. And also we're holding collaborative workshops. And we're holding a collaborative workshop here on June the 19th is the next one. And so, like I said, this is a briefing session, so I'm almost done. And actually, it's just a sort of quick hit. You can ask as many questions as you want. But if you have a project idea already and you want to kind of workshop it a bit more, you want to get kind of support in how you can make it a better project, we're holding sort of day-long workshops. And I believe we'll hopefully be holding it here as well. So, and you can come, bring your partners, spend a day, workshop it with other potential partner applicants, and actually get a lot more detail and a lot more information about how you can submit your form. Okay, and in terms of just to briefly cover the final application. I mean, it's pretty self-evident. You can only apply to the final application if you've been successful at expression of interest stage. You have 12 months at finding out that you have been successful to submit that. So if you've kind of done a quick job in terms of pulling together your ideas, wanting to submit it because the deadline's coming up, you can actually then spend a month a year actually pulling together your partners further, getting the kind of agreements in place and actually, you know, get a much better understanding of your project. But you have, so it's a year or until the 10th of March, 2014, whichever one comes first. So if you submit in December this year, and then you have to find out with 7 weeks, I mean, you could potentially have less than a year, but effectively you have about a year either way. And then also just really to emphasize, it's good to take time and develop the project to get the right people and commitments in place. Now, I put this slide in, and actually this is new, in terms of just to give you a flavor of some of the projects that we just funded. In February this year, we announced that we'd funded 9 projects. And these include sort of Royal Opera House, Script, Museum of Design and Plastics, Pavilion down Southwest, Imperial War Museum. And I think in terms of you have questions about, you know, is my project right? What's a good example or whatnot? I would really encourage you to look at the summary of these on the website that we have at the moment and to follow and to track what they've been up to. We've got a learning partner that's part of the program, so working with the funded partners and us at NESTA in terms of the delivery, whose main job it is to help the projects to self-reflect on what they've been learning and to pull out the key lessons and the key kind of findings and then disseminate that to the sector. They'll be launching a sort of online magazine called Native later on this year, I believe in June. And in that we'll sort of have all of the kind of the really good kind of tangible stuff that's happening on a kind of weekly, monthly, you know, as the projects are developing and progressing. So I would encourage you, as soon as that's up, to kind of check it, but also to read through the sort of summaries and find out about the projects that we have funded. Okay, and then lastly, here's the URL for our website and also the email for our fund. Okay, thank you very much.
Whoa.
Sorry.
That's a bit Jimi Hendrix. Angela, thank you very much indeed. Can I invite questions, please, from the floor for the panel?
Yes, it's 1 year. Yeah.
Can I just ask, can you all hear the questions? Can you hear me? Yes. Good. If you can't hear the questions, can anyone not hear the questions at the back? Okay. Can I just ask whoever's responding to the question to summarise the question and then respond? Any other questions?
Can you have more than one academic or technology partner? Yes, you can. There's no limit on the number of collaborations or the number of partners that you can have in a project. You do need to have one lead applicant, though. That's sort of... No, one lead, yeah, one lead organization with an arts project.
Thank you. Please.
Could you expand a bit on the type of research questions you're looking for?
The type of research questions that we're looking for are questions that are of interest to the wider arts sector. I mean, it's very particular. I mean, you need to be able to... I mean, have you got any ones in mind? I mean, it's kind of how long is a piece of string? The questions, well, they obviously need to have an element of technology. I mean, it's a digital R&D, I mean, it's a digital fund in order to support technology projects, but they need to have an element of audience engagement and or the development of new business models. Yeah.
This is a bit cheeky because I'm in the chair and I shouldn't really do this, but I'm an arts and humanities scholar, and I think this is a question coming from an arts and humanities angle, and I think the question is probably, given that the Arts and Humanities Research Council are involved in the programme, to what extent can arts and humanities academics frame questions that would be appropriate for their disciplinary backgrounds? And I suspect the answer is, but I don't know, and we could seek clarification from the AHRC, yes, we can. That we can ask those kinds of questions that might be very at home in, say, the study of literature or the study of art history. But on the other hand, the additional questions that Angela's alluding to are really important too. And I think arts and humanities scholars would find them quite difficult to answer independently, but working in partnership with technology providers and with cultural organisations gives them sufficient expertise in their team to begin to answer quite a broad set of questions.
So can you have an existing project that's already been completed?
Or parts thereof, if you've got, say, something that's been independently produced entity and then pushing to a different realm, that allow providing the council with criteria?
Yes. You can have sort of an existing project that then has a sort of new lease on life as long as it meets all the existing criteria and whatnot. But I think it's important to make sure that you have something that's actually going to be tested. It's not already been proven that you're actually doing something new, and it's not just basically further funding for an existing project. So when I say you can kind of carry on from a project, but you can't just sort of fund a project that's already up and running and you've already proven the model.
Is there a maximum amount you can apply for?
Yes, there is a maximum amount. It's £125,000.
Are you sure chances of success depend on how much you apply for?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Is your chance of success in any way related to how much you apply for?
No, there is no correlation between how much you apply for and your chances of success. We're looking to fund the best projects. Mm-hmm.
But just, I could even understand the time frame for submission as in terms of when that project needs to start by. That might influence the project concept.
Totally.
Missing by March, when do you...
No. You have to submit your expressions of interest. The deadline is the 30th of December this year.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that. If then, if you're successful,
Mm-hmm.
and you then submit in March, what then after that is the time frame in which the project needs to be delivered?
A year. The time frame for when the project needs to be delivered is a year.
But is that from March, or from finding out?
You would find out you were successful. It would be from when you found out you were successful.
Do you have any idea what time that is?
Around June, of that year. So it's important if you have time-sensitive projects, I think, to get in contact and basically have a conversation about your individual needs in terms of that. And we can give you a bit of guidance about when we think you should submit and how quickly you should turn things around. I think it's important, especially if you've got particular shows or programs that need to fit into stuff, to start having a conversation with us early in order to make sure that you can hit those deadlines. Okay. What's the role of NESTA and the Arts Council in the kind of ongoing support of the project after you've been received funding? NESTA's role is to manage the fund, and so our role is very much a day-to-day contact for each of the individual projects. We approve, decide, and work with the projects in terms of milestones and delivery. We also have a learning partner that works with NESTA as the manager, and they work much more, I'd say, closely with the individual projects. We're looking to fund somewhere between sort of 60 to 80 projects, and so we can't necessarily have an oversight or hand like contact day to day with every single one all the time. And so we're hoping to kind of use them to best kind of, as I say, sort of support those projects, get them to sort of self-reflect and look at their activities, and then also to kind of disseminate the learning to the wider sector. And within that, so within the learning kind of package, each project has a certain element of needing to kind of update the fund on what they've been up to, how things are progressing, so that we really can capture this kind of knowledge and learning and share it with the sector as it's happening, and not sort of at the end. We don't just want, I mean, obviously we do want a research report when it's completed, and we're very, very happy with the ones that we have, but we also want to have nuggets and bits of information and the whole development of the R&D process as it's happening and as it takes place. And so there is a certain commitment in order to fulfill that in terms of sharing the knowledge and the learning. And there's an element of participation in 4 events and whatnot, but it's not onerous, and there's no additional monitoring added to the sort of grant in that sense. So that all of the monitoring and the kind of evaluation is wrapped up in the learning partner, the package that they're facilitating. And in terms of the Arts Council's role?
Can I just say something, Richard? Sorry. I'm Relationship Manager for Digital and Creative Economy in the West Midlands, so I'm to support this area's bids. So we worked in partnership with NESTA. We provided the funding, but we really wanted the science and technology perspective in that collaboration with the arts. So that was why we partnered with NESTA. But I'm on the ground. I'm happy to talk to people about applications, so pre-application, and also going through the application process. Thanks very much. You can go on NESTA's website. There is a matching service there, but also looking at some of the pilot projects that we ran in 2010 and looking at the technology partners there. Also use your academic partners. Obviously this is a hub for the creative industry, so always touch base with the Arts Council, with University of Birmingham, and just looking at peers and who peers use.
Okay.
If I was to put an expression in something now,
Mm-hmm.
I would do a 7-week timing, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
I then whether an application would be say in October, would I be able to access them before March?
Yes. Oh, sorry. So we have, so the March the 10th is the final deadline. And so there's 4 more points of funding. Like we'll do the expression of interest is on a rolling application basis, but the final applications are assessed at effectively quarterly. So we've already had one in February, we'll have another one around June, and then we'll have another one October, and then another one sort of around December. So these dates do shift a little, so we don't publish them. Also, we kind of want people to focus on their expression of interest from the outset, and then we let you know when the final application deadlines are.
So I'll get an application in October, how long will I hear?
Well, when were you here? I believe there's one in December. About 2 months after, yeah.
2 months.
About that. I mean, it's not a hard fast.
I'll stand up. If you're successful in this application and the R&D brings out some sort of commercial product, where does the IP reside, or who does it reside with?
We're quite open about. I mean, we don't hold the IP. We ask that whoever actually created it, had it to start with. I mean, that's a kind of conversation between the partnership, really. It's not for us to decide, in fact. So if the technology partner has some sort of proprietary software from the outset, that's something that they maintain control of. We don't look to take an ownership or a stake in any business.
Yes, the 2 premises of the fund are audience engagement and business models. So you've seen the Imperial War Museum up there. They were also successful in the pilot. So it's how we use artists, technology within different settings. So it could be a venue, it can also be a heritage organisation, it could be a library. You know, it is about the artists and that intervention.
There's no requirement for match funding other than the fact that if you do have match funding, or that's 100% committed at time of your final application. But you're not required to. We will support the complete costs of the project up to £125,000.
Hi, can I just ask, I don't quite understand the rules of collaborating outside of England. It seems to be England, the UK, and not the UK, and it seems to be confusing in the notes. Can you clarify?
So the project needs to be based in England. The lead applicant needs to be from England. The technology provider can be from anywhere, but because we're working with, so to explain that, so we're working with the Arts Council England, and so the arts project, the arts activity needs to be based in England. When we're working with the Arts and Humanities Research Council, which has a UK focus or remit, and so their research partner needs to be based at a UK higher education institute or based in the UK. So they could be from Scotland, they could be from Wales, they could be from England, but there's a wider circle for the research academic element. And in terms of the technology provider, we have no hard and fast rules on that. In fact, we're happy for, innovation happens everywhere. Technology experts are everywhere, so we have no issues of where they come from.
Can any of the research activities be outside England, like testing and evaluation?
Can any of the research activities be based outside of it? I would kind of question what kind of activities these were going to be if they're kind of taking place outside, in terms of whether or not they were actually, the activity of the project was then based in England, and also whether or not it was applicable to arts organizations in England. So it would just, I think that we'd probably good to have a conversation about what your particular activities were going to be and whether or not. But in general, there aren't necessary rules about that, but it would just depend. I don't. Testing in schools in England. I mean, I don't necessarily see a problem with that, other than how much of the activity is generally based in in England then, because the projects need to be based in England. So if you're doing the testing, which the project is about testing, I mean, these are kind of research and development projects. So is what you're saying then, by doing the testing, that your activities are actually taking place outside of England? So, I mean, again, it's probably best to have, for that kind of specific question, to have a conversation offline about that.
I wondered if you could just clarify what changes have been made either to the application process or to the goals of the programme based off that first round of pilot projects and what you learned from them.
Yeah, well, we learned a lot from the pilot projects, actually, and a lot of things did change. I mean, fundamentally, the fund is still about audience engagement and or the development of new business models, and that hasn't changed. So the overall objective of the fund hasn't changed. But at the start, for the pilots, we had arts projects working with technology providers, and they submitted an application form. And then we had researchers on the side, and actually they submitted an application form separately, and then we matched them later. And we realized after the pilots that actually that wasn't as an effective collaboration as it was as having people kind of work together from the outset. So we changed the application process to reflect that, and actually we ask that all projects have their 3 partners identified from the beginning. In addition, we didn't have an expressions of interest stage. We learned that actually it'd be nicer to have people spend a lot of time developing their applications. They filled in hundreds and hundreds of words, and actually then we had to reject quite a few because it was only a pilot and we only had a very small amount of money. And so we felt that actually it'd be better to do a quick turnaround, try and get people to get their ideas submitted, reflect, be rejected or accepted, and then basically be able to resubmit, as soon as they'd found out effectively, in order to then try and get people to not waste their time on, filling in large forms and doing a lot of work when actually they weren't going to be successful. What else did we? Oh, yeah.
I'll just add to that. You do receive feedback, so I would urge you, look at the expressions of interest form. It's 1,000 words. We're really trying to interrogate that and look at the idea. So it's the idea behind it. And because we've got this deadline, December 2013, it's just like any other grant application. In project management terms, you have to look to fail or to understand the timescale if your application does get rejected. We run grants for the Arts Programme, National Programme, 38% success rate. So please, don't refine your ideas till they're the beautiful product and submit late. Come into us early, understand the process, look at the website. All the materials are on there, the Digital R&D website. Thanks.
Have you got anything you can tell us about the future of similar funding beyond March 2014?
No, is the quick answer. It's constantly evolving. As Arts Council England, we're a national body. We do have grants for the arts, but we also have flexible strategic funds. So we identified with NESTA the gap in deficit in skills and digital capacity within the arts sector in 2008. And by 2010, so that's a 24-month period, then we get a fund. So obviously working at a policy level and a strategic level to respond quickly, but I can't say what the future holds.
Neither can I. But on the other hand, looking at it from the point of view of the Arts and Humanities Research Council and the other research councils in the UK, and also from the point of view of European funding, I think there's an increasing interest in the kind of space that you're all discussing today, which is to say collaboration between cultural and heritage organisations, working with SMEs, working with academics. So those various funding pots are driven by different priorities. For the Research Council, so the AHRC say, partners on this particular funding project, it's driven by research questions, but research questions that are going to have impact on the wider world. The research councils all are increasingly recognising that it's important that research is getting out into the wider world. Working in collaboration as researchers with arts organisations and with technology specialists in the SMEs enables academics to reach that wider audience. So although I don't think any of us can predict what will happen in the next 12 months to 2 years, what we're all observing is growing numbers of initiatives like this one that we're here today to talk about, in some cases not multi-agency like this one, which is what makes it so unusual and so innovative, but nevertheless with very, very similar agendas. So I think it's a question of watch this space.
I was just going to add, I'm going through this process myself at the moment with a number of partners in the room. And I think one of the really valuable things we did when we submitted our expression of interest, which was probably last summer now, I think, was being declined. And for those of you in the room that know me, I don't like being declined. But actually, and Julia and Roy, who's in the room, and Simon can attest, it was actually really valuable for us because the project wasn't right. It made us really re-examine what we're doing, and we're going through a full application process at the moment. But I rang up Angela to express I was slightly unhappy about being declined. But it was a really good process because actually what we did on that was there was some really good feedback, there was some really good points. It's made us completely rethink around the research working that we're doing with the university. And to add, I think somebody asked about how many partners. We've got 3 technology partners, one digital company who's here, one school which is here, a freelancer who's here, 3 arts organisations and 2 freelancers, all on our project. It's a complete nightmare to manage, as you can imagine, but that for us is actually quite a big learning process, is that we're collaborating across education, university, technology and the arts in quite a meaningful way. And I think this process has been really, I'm not just saying it, it's been really valuable for us to kind of keep re-examining what we're doing. So the feedback is actually really important. We found that really useful.
Yeah, unfortunately there isn't funding to work up bids. Yeah.
So I was saving this for the end because I was going to do a little bit about what we do at do.collaboration, and we've got an AHRC grant here which Lara's working on. It's called the Collaborative Arts Triple Helix, or CATH for short. We're trying to get acronyms that are people's first names. Bob's next, if we can work out what it stands for. So the CATH project involves holding workshops, the first of which will be next week, 15th of May. And you can ask me or Lara about this later and sign up. In fact, many of you might already be signed up. that'll involve having academics, SMEs and cultural organisations present, coming along, hearing about how we're already collaborating in this way, hearing some stories about how that's working, and then talking about what the strengths and weaknesses are of collaboration, doing some kind of speed dating, so trying to figure out where they could collaborate across with the other two sectors. And what we're hoping is going to happen is that emerging from the workshops we'll get triplets, or that's to say little teams from the three sectors. So an SME may be working with a cultural organisation and working with an academic, defining a project, and we'll have £4,000 to award to 16 of these triplets to help them to deal with exactly the question you're raising, which is how do we go from having a great idea to actually developing it, prototyping it, testing whether our relationship works, whether this has got legs, and then potentially having developed a prototype, using it to maybe lever in more money by applying for the R&D fund. And I believe NESTA and ACE are going to keep a conversation going with us on that project, and we'll probably come and talk at the workshops and try and see how our seed money might work with their programme. So I'd urge you, if you're interested, to talk to us, as I said, or to look at our website, and then to try to come along to one of the CATH workshops. One of the important things about CATH, with my arts academic hat on, is that we're actually studying the process. So by coming along and being involved in the workshops, we will be assisting partners in between events. We will be helping with brokerage and helping enable you to build the relationships that you need to deliver within a year a prototype. But we'll also be studying what goes on at the workshops, what goes on in between the workshops, and trying to develop, well, we will be developing a best practice guide, because we figure there are quite a few barriers to effective collaboration. We work in different sectors, we have different operational and strategic drivers, we use different languages, sometimes we use the same language in different ways, but once you start to understand these problems and talk through them with partners, it's an immensely rewarding process. And I'm just thinking of a project that was run this year called Cops and Robbers, AHRC funded. I think it only got the money because it's got a funny title, but it's Communities of Practice. And that was a multi-sector collaboration that involved a study done by David Hopes of precisely these questions. How do the barriers work? And it points to the fact that real innovation emerges when academics work with cultural organisations and with tech providers. So please do come and be part of CATH.
The workshop on June the 19th is a collaborative workshop where we invite any interested organisation who wants to workshop an idea further. So we invite you to bring along your partners if you have them, so researchers or technology providers. And we have a facilitator that works with the different groups in order to kind of understand more about what your proposition is, what's the value of the research, how it can benefit the wider sector, what audiences are you looking to target, how are you going to design it and develop it further. So it's a really, I think it's a very useful. You register on our website. So all of the collaborative workshops will be posted up on the Digital R&D Fund website, and you register via Eventbrite. So it's a first come, first served basis. And we try to get a good mix of arts organizations, technology providers, and researchers there.
Also, if you've signed in today, you'll be on the mailing list anyway. So we'll be sending it out. Everyone that's registered on the Eventbrite today will be we'll get that on the mailing list because we're obviously hosting it here. And if you follow at do.collaboration on Twitter, all of that gets posted on as well.
On what the funding could be spent on within the project? Like, is it possible that you come back and say, we're not going to cover X because that's infrastructure really, or we're not going to cover that because that's a staffing cost from outside the partner organisations? Are there restrictions on where the money can be spent within the project?
So are there restrictions in terms of the funding? I don't have a list of things that either are or aren't included that I can necessarily provide for you. If you're in doubt, I would, again, urge you to get in contact and have a conversation. We do fund technology, build websites, applications, and whatnot. I mean, that's the nature of the fund. We do allow costs for staff in terms of actually running the project. So we don't like the idea of necessarily, oh, I think I've died. Is this still working? Okay, fine, okay. So we don't cover like new staff appointments, permanent staff, but we do cover staff time and staff costs for the particular activity associated with this project. So we cover all of the costs within this fund. I mean, if you're going to buy a whole load of brand new iMacs and whatnot, we'd question how relevant that is for a particular project. But in a way, if it's relevant and if it's appropriate for the project and it gets through, we wouldn't come back and say, no, you can't do that. We will be creating a knowledge bank now with the, so is there a knowledge bank for, I don't know if it's going to answer your particular request though in terms of who are the appropriate people, who are the appropriate groups to work with, or what's the sort of guidelines. I think that might be what you're asking. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's the point of the fund. I mean, how to avoid the mistakes of another project. I mean, that's basically what we're hoping to generate from each of the projects that we fund is, even if it's not successful, and actually we don't really couch things as being successful or unsuccessful, because actually failure can be just as is just as good knowledge created from the fact if somebody fails as if they succeed. And so we're happy to have both, actually. We want to have both. Sometimes you learn more from failure than you do from success. So actually, we will be, this is the sort of native, so the online magazine that I was talking about will actually capture all that. So the organization we're working with is called 21 Awake, and they are working with each of the funded projects, plus NESTA and the Arts Council and the HRC, in order to capture the not just what the projects are doing and what they're learning about their particular technology activity, but also the process of R&D and what's the different kind of pivot points and what's the different activities that they've done and why they chose to go down one path or another. So all of that kind of tangible but intangible activities we're hoping to capture and wrap up in that particular output, that magazine.
Sorry, 1 second. I'm being a rude chair again and interrupting and saying I think that's a really, really important question that's been raised, and it's a timely reminder of how fresh this kind of collaboration actually is. That there aren't simple answers to how you have three sectors work in collaboration, and that actually this is kind of, it seems to me, a kind of, I'm tempted to say a new dawn, but it makes me sound like a Maoist. It's kind of a new moment for all sectors where there's a recognition of the value of collaboration. It's a risk and a good one to take for the funding bodies who are supporting this kind of work, but I think it's going to take some time for us to get to the point where we all understand how best to make these kinds of collaborations work.
The researcher does need to be a postdoctoral standing, or the lead or the principal investigator needs to have a PhD, yes. And that's a requirement passed down from the HRC. Sorry, could you speak up? Are we looking for an even spread across the 6 themes in terms of projects that we're funding? No, We're not necessarily. We are looking for, those were themes that were identified by the sector when we ran the pilot. We did a sort of crowdsourcing plus survey of sort of key organizations to see what they thought were kind of some of the thematic areas that they wanted to work with in terms of the digital. But we're not necessarily looking to fund, you know, an even split across all of them.
Yeah, I have a question about the basis on which projects will be funded. Can you tell me whether they'll be funded on the basis of full economic costs?
You can claim full economic costs, yes.
Full economic costs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To what percentage will projects be funded? Because of course IHRC...
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Projects will be funded up to 100%, and you can charge full economic costing. Basically, the grant gets given to the organisation with the arts project. Any budgetary conversations are to be had by the collaboration, independent of the fund. We just want you to kind of submit what those figures are and whatnot, and we're looking for value for money for projects. So, and we're not prescriptive in terms of which partner gets what amount of money, but there shouldn't necessarily be an imbalance. You shouldn't be spending 90% of your project on tech and only 10% on research. There really should be a kind of, I don't want to go so far as to say equal weighting, but there should be a sort of clear rationale for the kinds of budgets associated with each of the partners. And if you do have match funding, or if there's less for, say, the research, if it's only like a few grand, then a definite commitment that there is going to be a guaranteed service provided by that particular partner through the rest of the year.
And so on the arts website, it gives you guidance as to how much to pay various art forms for the daily amount. Is there anything that's similar to the tech and the research department?
No, we don't have. We don't have kind of guidelines for how much you should pay a tech provider, or how much you should pay a researcher. I think it's pretty safe to say it varies across the country, and it also varies depending upon the kind of technology or kind of activity that you're going to be doing in terms of the research methodology, and also, yeah, again, like the platform or application that you might be building. So we couldn't possibly have an exhaustive list and whatnot, but I would suggest, as with anything, any kind of service that you're looking to get or any kind of collaboration, you have more than one conversation with somebody and try to understand, A, what you're getting for that money, and also, you know, what it is that others might be charging.
If you can't hear, will you wave, so I don't have to run over there and get the mic again? I think from an HRC point of view, how you charge for researchers could vary slightly, but they're going to be based in a higher education institute or an independent research organisation, which is to say one of the national, basically one of the national museums. So those organisations will have clear ideas about what they should be charging. There are probably only two options. What percentage are you charging of their time on their contract, or are you treating them as a consultant? So I think if in doubt, the answer keeps coming up again and again, and it needs to, it's such a complex programme, approach the funding body. It's a three-agency award, so you could approach the AHRC with research-specific questions and ask how they would think about how the research is being costed here.
I've got a question about that. This happens to the global data and NESTA project. What's the situation in terms of any services about?
The situation with VAT is that we do not pay, okay, so you get a grant, say if you apply for £125,000, you only get £125,000. You do not get to add VAT on top of that. But you can include VAT within that £125,000 as long as you're not then going to claim the VAT back at another time. So you can't double count on your VAT and basically make a profit on the project. But you can, if you aren't going to claim the VAT back, you can include that within the £125,000. You just don't get any additional amount to what you've requested or what you've put in for, i.e. additional VAT.
Do we have any more questions?
I've already talked about the AHRC CAF project that we're running for the next year, but actually probably the most important project that we run is the Digital Heritage Demonstrator, or DHD, that, as the poster explains, is about encouraging collaboration between business, cultural organisations and academics. And that's a 2.4 million European Regional Development Fund project, which partly funded the building of this hall, with all its multi-user, multi-touch interfaces, its facilities for testing, for tracking the movement of users in the space, analysing, etc. It's also funded staff to do stuff, and the doing is the important part. So we have this project in partnership with Birmingham Museums Trust, ex-BMAC, Ironbridge Gorge Museum Trust, the Hive in Worcester, and the Library of Birmingham. And some of what we're doing on the project involves our team of technical developers and user testers developing in partnership with those partners multi-user, multi-touch solutions, some of which you can see actually in BMAG at the moment, others of which you'll be able to see when the Library of Birmingham opens in September, others of which you can see at the Hive, and the Hive's touch table application that we've done with them has just been shortlisted for a national award. I'm very pleased to say, fingers crossed we'll win it next week. And then we're also developing content for the Ironbridge Gorge Museum Trust. So that's one aspect of what we do, developing kind of prototype solutions which leave quite a lot of space for SMEs to come in, learn from the lessons that we've learned, engage, take the platforms forward, perhaps transfer them across to other projects. So I'm thinking here of Orange Leaf, who've been in discussion with our team, who've developed these kinds of outputs, and are now developing things with the team down in Brighton. In other instances, SMEs come in, meet us, talk to us, and we can offer all kinds of business assists that can vary from, well, for example, doing a development test of how the Connect can be used to interact with a map, and all kinds of different things where our expertise can add value to an SME. There's no charge for this. This is a not-for-profit European funded project. Our job is to try to offer assistance to SMEs, to try to advise them on how to find their way into big cultural players if they're struggling with that, for example. So one of the key things that we do is hold do.cake events on the last Wednesday of every month. Now, do.cake stands for do, collaboration and knowledge exchange, but you need to know that that is actual cake. And I can't quite work out whether people are coming because they want to do collaboration and knowledge exchange or they just want a cake. But it doesn't really matter, because actually eating cake often leads to collaboration. It's an amazing fuel for collaborative work. So that's the last Wednesday of every month, although the next one isn't on the last Wednesday. I think it's the last Tuesday. Thanks, Joe. You just did the... So we urge you to come along to these events where you'll hear presentations from SMEs, cultural organisations, academics, and there's lots of discussion. Sometimes, the last one I really enjoyed a presentation from an SME saying, I've sort of developed this pitch, what do you think? And it's just getting that critical feedback. Out of those events emerge collaborations, sometimes not. So please do come to the cake event. We also have another European project that, like the Digital Heritage Demonstrator, is led by Gino Bellavia. Is Gino in the room right now? No. Well, Gino runs both of our European projects, and the SMART project, which is FP7 funded, is quite interesting, I think, because it's really looking at people like Gino, who across Europe, and the 13 partners here, are trying to do this kind of what the Europeans call triple helix collaboration between the three sectors, and trying to do what Arts Council, NESTA and AHRC are trying to do, which is to get a better understanding of how this works, why it doesn't sometimes work, where the value added is for all of the partners. Now, I'm back to the point I made earlier, which is I really do think this is an exciting moment for all of us. I think the drive that's coming from funders to encourage us to work in collaboration has enormous potential. I think there's clear added value for every single person in this room to work in partnership. I think it's challenging to work outside of our comfort zones, but massively rewarding. And I think it's heartening that as we try and gaze into the future, well, I see more euros and more pounds and more dollars, and that's good for us to do things that make a difference to our users and that actually make a difference to the economy as well. And at heart, the Digital Heritage Demonstrator isn't being funded by the European Union because they care on this particular theme about culture. So don't be too upset by that, but frankly that's the reality. What they care about is the economy, and what they see is a real opportunity for us to work in collaboration and make an economic difference. So that's pretty much the end of my spiel. Just before I invite you out, I do want to, sorry. Oh, apparently I can invite questions, which I might do in a second. But I do want to thank Rebel Uncut who've been filming this event. It's really good of them, preserving all your words of wisdom and our comment for posterity. It's very, very good. So lunch isn't ready. Has anyone got any questions about do., or has any new ideas or questions emerged for the panel?
I'm not sure if you've got this far yet, but have you got any sort of ratios of how many people, what proportion are likely to be successful? You talked earlier about 38% in other funds, but
in terms of percentages of people that are successful that apply, I'd say it's about, actually, Clara.
Hello, I'm Clara. I'm the program administrator. So if you do put in an expression of interest, you will get some information from me. So hello to you all. Just to say, I think we've just done a sort of admin breakdown, and it does work out about 50% at expressions of interest, and then it's about 60% success rate. 40% success rate at final application stage. So it is quite split at the moment, but we obviously encourage you to put in your application as soon as possible, because at the moment we do have a lot of expressions of interest, but obviously as we reach the 30th of December, that is going to go up significantly. So if you have got your project, we do encourage you to put it in as soon as possible.
Any more questions or comments?
Is there any one place that Arts Council England are collecting information about what the sector is seeing, the art sector is seeing as the challenges of using information technology? Because obviously that's changing all the time as technology.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we do have a very active research department. We're a national organisation, but we do like to work with partners. And we realise that in the true sense of collaboration, partners are better skilled at this. Hence the Digital R&D Fund, hence the partnership with AHRC. We also partner with the BBC. So yes, we do collect our own data, but really, as Richard mentioned, this is very much an emerging area in digital space. We launched a new platform for viewing the arts called The Space with the BBC, but that's not the end of the story. And what we're really trying to do is throw it back to the sector and saying to artists and cultural organisations, come forward with your ideas, because we don't know. We're testing the unknown, and that's what's really, really innovative about this fund. It's not outcome focused. We're not risky. We are quite risky in some of our investments, and that's been brilliant for us. In the pilot project, Happenstance was one of the projects that nobody was sure about, but it was absolutely brilliant. So do have a look at the pilot studies, the 0.5 million we invested in the 8 organisations, and that will give you a really good perspective on what we're trying to fund and how we're trying to fund it.
Well, it's more like a comment really, I suppose. My concern is about smaller organisations and about how those organisations actually get a foot in the door. And I'm a small arts organisation, or cultural organisation, and to form those relationships with the bigger cultural heritage organisations is time-consuming and very difficult to work and navigate in. And I suppose this is just a general comment really, but how the funds right across the three different projects you've talked about today actually represent the smaller freelance individual arts organisations and how they can be aided to ensure that their understanding of cultural heritage is taken on board and used in innovative ways.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, through Grants for the Arts, we support individuals and smaller organisations. Capacity is always going to be an issue if you're bidding into a national fund. If you're going for European structured funds, it helps to be an organisation of scale, because when you come to implement the project, it's a lot of work, and that's what we found out from the pilot project. It isn't something that you can do after your day job, and that's why we're looking at the maximum of 125,000 investment. That's significant, so that you can pause what you normally do and really focus on this project. So if you feel your organisation isn't of scale, it's about collaboration, so collaborating across sectors with other organisations, or testing us through Grants for the Arts. Come and speak to Arts Council about your project. We obviously do fund digital projects through Grants for the Arts.
You might also consider coming to the camp workshops that I've spoken about already, because that's an HRC funded project that specifically says that it's about collaboration with small cultural organisations. And we did that deliberately, and we were funded to do that. We have a very broad definition of a small cultural organisation. It's basically no nationals. So it could be quite a large cultural organisation, but we wanted to make it clear that this was also open to precisely the kind of cultural organisations you're talking about, with precisely the kind of needs that you have, and with all the things that you have to offer. So I would encourage you to come to the camp workshop next week, but it's selling out really quick. So
I've already signed up.
Oh, it's nice to see you there. That's awesome. Any other questions or comments? In that case, I think you've worked really hard. I think you've been a fantastic set of questions to the panel. Thanks again to the panel. I know lunch isn't ready, but I think you can go out into the foyer, mill around, get a drink, and wait for lunch to be ready.